Thank you all for inviting me here today. Like your host here said, I'm Sergeant Angie Butler. I'm with the Barrie Police Service. I currently work in downtown Barrie and part of a crew down there that helps with any problems that we might have downtown. Before that though, I was in crime prevention. So I did various presentations such as scams that I hear that you heard on your last seminar. And the 55 Alive Driver Refresher course is one course that I did through our city recreation center. It was a 6-week-long course, about 2 hours once a week. And we did lots of practice video and talked about things, not just for someone that we might consider a senior, but even for someone like myself. Because the older we get, the more things change and the more driving affects our lives, affect our driving. I myself drive for a living. As a police officer, pretty much that consists of most of my day. And I still find driving a little, I'm apprehensive sometimes. Days like today or during the night, I find over the years things have changed for me as well. So before I get into some of the little things that might be of interest to you, what I'm going to do is talk about, as we age, the things that affect us and what we can do to try to keep ourselves in the right physical and mental state of mind to be able to focus on the road if that's what we choose to do and to keep driving. So I did have some handouts at the back. I saw a lot of you with them. So I'm going to recap a little bit of that first. One of the biggest things that I taught about in that course as well was staying physically active. You know, when I taught it, some of my students thought it was kind of silly, but we would practice neck exercises. So turning your head from side to side, and it's all about your shoulder checks, right? Using your mirrors and doing those checks instead of just looking in the sides in your rear view mirror. So being physically active, it keeps you strong and it keeps you flexible. And those are two things that are really important when you're driving. I don't know if you have noticed, but I've certainly noticed over the years that driving is a little bit more scary because you have lots of aggressive drivers on the road and you need to be focused and you need to be able to respond to a situation that's happening in front of you. So being strong and flexible will help you with, you know, turning your steering wheel, looking over your shoulder, doing those checks, and that's really important. Does anyone here do regular vision and hearing test? Yeah? Yep. 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 So that, and are you still driving? Oh, yeah. Yes. So, but that's a prime example of why you should do those regular visits to your doctor for hearing and vision, because your vision changes. I even noticed in the last year or two that my vision has changed, and now I have to wear glasses when I drive. If I didn't have those regular visits, I wouldn't know something like that. So it's really important, the older we get, the more our vision declines and the more our hearing declines. And hearing is really important as well, because you want to be able to hear those emergency vehicles behind you. You know, the sound travels behind the vehicles, it doesn't travel ahead. So when you're in front of those emergency vehicles, you need to be able to hear them as best you can, which is why I always suggest, even though it may be cold or whatever, to have your window down just an inch or two, just to be able to hear those sounds around you. It makes a huge difference, right? What else? Oh, vision. So we talked about the vision. You need to be able to, big thing about the vision as well is because who finds it really hard to drive at night? Does anybody? I do.
I don't.
You don't drive at night?
No.
No, and that's really good too, and that's something that I talk about. You have to know your own limitations and your own judgment. If you find it hard to drive at night, then do your errands during the day or you're visiting or whatever you need to do. You have to be comfortable behind that wheel, because as we age, our vision changes. We get more glare from the road. Our eyes change. We're less able to see during the night objects or pedestrians. It's harder to see those things. Anti-glare glasses, if anybody has those. I know I have those on my glasses that I use when I drive at night. That's a really good thing too. But you need to, what's your name, sorry? What's your name?
My name, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Like Elizabeth said, you got to know your own limitations, right? I don't like driving in the snow too much. So if I was going out, I would change my time of day of when I was going to be able to do that. Managing chronic conditions. If anybody has any kind of diabetes or suffers from seizures or anything like that, it's really important to know to have those regular visits with your doctor, anybody at any age, because you need to know what you may be facing when you're driving and to be able to manage those conditions to keep you healthy, to keep you on the road if that's what you want to be able to do. Winter. So one of the big things too, as I always say to people, is that drive when the roads are good. Don't drive when they're really bad. Why do you want to go out anyway, right? Stay home. It's best to err on that side of caution. My mother always says to me, it's worth skipping doing something than going out and putting yourself in danger because of weather. She always says it's not a hill to die on. So, you know, the thing about it is that you need to look at the weather, you need to forecast ahead and try to, you know, see if weather's going to change or what the road conditions are like, because it's really important just to take a step back, and some things aren't worth it to travel out in that weather. I was even talking to Monica this morning, and we were talking about the weather and what it was like this morning, and if, you know, if today was going to turn out to be successful, because it was really horrible conditions this morning, right? We're lucky that it's better now. And don't drive when you're tired or upset or angry. Sometimes if you're hungry, don't drive because it makes you angry. So those are one thing. And update your driving skills. I know that Sean's going to talk about different things coming up after me that'll follow into my presentation. But this 55 Alive Driver Refresher course, I taught it for a few years, and it's very helpful and very, very successful. I would encourage anybody you can even take it online, I believe. It not only helps you with renewal of your driver's license or things that you need to be aware of, but it teaches you practical skills that will help you feel more confident, because that's what driving is about. It's about being confident, and sometimes it's not about you, it's about everybody else on the road. You have to be aware of everybody else. You may be fine, you may be driving appropriately, feel comfortable where you are, but it's other people that you also have to watch out for. So what I'm going to do, I have a few slides that I'd like to show you folks, to kind of some of the main big things that people are always concerned about. These were kind of like the hot topics in the 55 Alive Driver Refresher course that everybody wanted to be able to know about to become a bit more confident. And the first one is about changing lanes. So the important thing, and this diagram will show it, depict it a little bit as well. So when you're about to change lanes, if you want to go to the bottom, Sean, that would be great. Thank you, right there, yeah. You always want to look for that gap. You need to give yourself lots and lots of time. The shoulder checks and checking the blind spots and all that is really, really important. So give yourself lots of time and maintain a very safe distance from the car in front of you. And you need to project forward. You need to be looking at least 2 blocks ahead of you to see if there's anything else coming. It's no good just to look into the car in front of you. Yes, sir.
Where's the put on the changing the traffic, the lights, the indicator light that you're going to make a change?
Yeah, so basically this picture is not really showing that
the whole sequence.
Yeah, it's not showing the traffic line patterns. It's
no, but when I want to make a change, I put my left.
Yes, yep.
I don't see that anyway.
Right there.
Oh,
yeah.
And signal. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And do your signal.
Yeah.
Okay,
so before you even make that change, you want to make sure that you have a safe distance from the car in front of you, and you project forward that you have enough space. Again, you want to put on your indicator. That's one thing that a lot of people complain about, that people do not use their indicator. Or after they've made that lane change, it's kept on for a long time. And then people have a hard time predicting your movements, right? So you're going to leave a nice space. You're going to look for blind spots. That would be on your left-hand side. If you're on the slow lane, you want to look to your left-hand side. That's why shoulder checks are so important to do that turn, because just your mirror is not going to get that, or your rearview mirror. Always do the shoulder checks. I don't know if anybody in here has on their side mirrors the little indicators that beep. Do you have that? Yeah. So if you're coming close to something in your blind spot, it will beep. They're amazing. I don't have that, and if you don't, just make sure you really do that shoulder check. And then when you do make that lane change, the important thing is here, and I'm sure you see it all the time, and I don't want to signal out anybody, but maybe some of our younger drivers who, not all of them, but some of them who may be a little bit aggressive, they move back in too fast. So basically, they haven't looked for any spots or any gaps, and they need to get back in front of the car that they've just passed because there's something else coming, and it's very dangerous. So you need to be able to give yourself a nice long distance to move ahead and then move in safely. Yes?
I think it should be stressed that people use their signal lights because that's frustrating. When I'm around here, many people don't know what the signal lights mean. You're lined up behind somebody and they don't tell you where to go, and that's frustrating. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, it's very frustrating because then, like what you're talking about, you don't know people's movements.
Exactly.
If they brake all of a sudden because then they have to turn left or right, it puts you in a compromising position, which is one of the good reasons, and I'll show it to you in the next slide.
That should be addressed.
Yeah, the gap.
Honestly.
Well, it is ticket worthy.
Really?
It is ticket worthy, yeah.
You gotta catch them first.
Yes.
Get the license.
Yeah. Oh, and that's something like we do it all the time. You can always call in a traffic complaint or a driving complaint to your local detachment, your OPP detachment, and either someone in person or someone in the station, based on the license plate that you have, follows up with that person.
Really?
And it can be a caution, it could be an infraction. So it's something that they follow up on. So definitely don't be afraid to do that. That's what we're here for, because everyone's safety is just not about your driving, it's everyone else's, right? So that's what we're there for. And the traffic guys love that stuff. They love it. Okay, so then just the next slide down, if you don't mind. So again, this is another example of not just changing lanes, but passing. And it's pretty much everything that I just talked about. And you can see this vehicle here. It has plenty of distance that before it's starting to pass. It's not riding up on the rear end of that other vehicle. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I've been there where I see someone coming up in my rear view mirror and they're passing and I feel like they're gonna clip my tail end because they're so close. So make sure you give yourself enough room, pull out, and then enough room before you scooch back in, using your indicator. All right, so entering and exiting a highway. This is one that we do get a lot of complaints with in Barrie, just because we have the major 400 series highway going through Barrie. There's lots of areas to exit and to enter the highway. So one of the biggest things, if you are going somewhere that you're not familiar with, try to take a little bit of time and source out where you're going to be, because one of the things, even for myself, when I first started policing, I found difficult. I'm not from Ontario, so when I came up to Ontario for policing, I didn't know the roads very well. So I would be scooching into that turn lane at the last minute because I didn't know my geographical area. Well, that's a dangerous thing to do, right? So you can see from this example, this car is now at the last minute decides I need to get off on this off ramp and basically cuts off the car in front of it, which is very dangerous. If you've missed your exit, go to the next one. You can always get back on. It's not worth it because that driver in front of, behind you may not be paying attention. So it's very, very dangerous. Try not to jump the gun if that happens to you. Just go to the next exit. And the important thing with entering a highway, and I find this because it can be very, very intimidating, especially on highways like the 400. You have transport trucks whizzing by, you've got cars passing and weaving in and out of traffic. And sometimes when you take those ramps, they're a tight turn before you get to that, that entranceway that hits the actual highway. Try to pick up your speed. That's the only thing I can suggest, because that yield lane before it turns into all the other lanes of traffic is not that long. And if other people aren't being considerate and moving to the left to allow you that space to get onto the highway, it's going to be very dangerous and you might end up going into the shoulder because you have no room to move over. So try to pick up your speed. That's what the ramps are meant for, to help you pick up your speed. If you're not comfortable with on and off ramps, then I would suggest taking a back road or taking the longer way and just go through the city. Sometimes it's not worth it, and as we all know, the 400 is a crazy highway. It's a pretty scary highway for anybody. You have that little guardrail in the middle, and you've got nowhere to go sometimes. Yes,
The
sir.
highway isn't crazy, the drivers are crazy.
Yes, I agree with you. Well, they're trying to fix the highway to make it better, but yes, the drivers are very aggressive, for sure.
This clown there, more than once in my driving time, would have careened over 2 or 3 lanes
Yep.
to get into that spot, which
Yep.
is even worse.
Yep, absolutely. And we see it all the time, and we get complaints for it all the time. So that's the thing, you have to be aware, especially if you're on that highway. I know when I'm on the highway, I don't particularly even like going on the highway, especially when I have my family. It's not worth it to me. So if it's something that intimidates you a little bit, or just take a longer route, it's only going to take you an extra 10 minutes or so, and it's worth your safety, for sure. Okay, so the next one that I'd like to talk about is your following distance, right? So we touched on this a little bit. It's so important to have at least like the 2 to 3 second rule, or 2 cars length in between you and the person in front of you. Because if that person doesn't use their indicator, or if that person brakes suddenly because they're too close to the car in front of them, if you're close to them, you have nowhere to go. You're going to ram right into the back of them, and you're going to be at fault just as much as they were, because you're too close to them. You didn't leave an appropriate distance between the two of you, and it could result, worst case, it's going to result in serious injury. If you have a distance between the car in front of you, then you have to look for your escape routes. If this car suddenly gets into a crash or rear ends the person in front of me, or brakes suddenly, where can I go? Can I go left? Can I go right? Do I have enough time to stop? So if you have that appropriate following distance, you should have enough time to stop. We see this all the time when cars rear end other cars, and it's called following too closely. I mean, it's pretty simplistic charge, but that's exactly what it is, because you are following too closely, and if you weren't, you would have had enough time to stop. So that natural gap is really important, and looking at your escape routes. So left turns and from private drives as well. Does anyone have a guess at, or an opinion of who would be at fault if that purple car was coming straight through the intersection and the white car was turning left on a green and collided or T-boned the purple car? Who would be at fault? Anyone have an idea? Yeah, the white car. The white car would be at fault.
You would be at fault, yes.
Yeah, because even though, so basically when you're at an intersection and you want, cars are coming in your direction and you want to turn left, this is one of the biggest
Accidents.
that we see all the time that we charge for. It is the biggest one. So what happens is that white car, we actually call him, in policing, we call him the sniper. Because you're at the other end, you're the purple car, okay? And you're coming straight. But that white car needs to keep an eye on the purple car, or otherwise they're gonna get themselves in a lot of trouble. So when you come out to make a left turn, you come up to the intersection, do not turn your wheels. Don't turn your wheels to turn left. Keep your wheels straight. Because if someone happens to rear end you while you're waiting to turn left, if your wheels are turned, they're going to rear end you and you're going to go right into traffic and you're going to get T-boned. If your wheels are straight and you're putting on your brakes, you're going to go straight and you're not going in the line of traffic. Does that make sense? Did I explain that right? Yeah. So that's the really important thing. So when you're making that left-hand turn with oncoming traffic, you got to look out for that sniper. And that sniper is the purple car. To say, where can I see past to see if that sniper is coming at me before I make my turn. So this is the one we see all the time. A lot of people think that they're not at fault. when that happens, but you are, because the traffic coming towards you actually has the right of way.
The one from the right.
Yeah, so let's look at this picture one more time and just take another scenario. If you can kind of use your imaginations to kind of picture what I'm describing. Let's say the white car is coming out of, it's a private plaza. So let's just say this is a private plaza, kind of like the one that we're in here right now. And this car wants to come out and it needs to turn left to get to where it's going. And there's all kinds of traffic whizzing by. What do you think would be the best thing to do in that situation?
To turn right, go around the block and go right.
Yep, right on. You're like the keener in the class, aren't you?
Sorry?
You're the keener in the class. Exactly, that's exactly what you do. Why not take that extra few minutes and go around the block to get out to where you need to be, instead of making that left-hand turn and trying to get in through all that traffic? So that's just the safest thing to do. Everybody thinks we watch people whizzing by us every day and passing, and how much further do they get ahead? You'll see them up at the next block, right? They maybe make up 2-3 seconds, that's it. So that's the best thing to do with that. Okay, so this is another example of a right-of-way situation. So this is a 4-way stop. Is everybody here from Collingwood mostly? No? Yeah. Where else is everybody from around?
Thornberry?
Oh, okay, Thornberry. How was your drive?
It was great.
Good. Wasaga? Yep. So I don't know how many of these that you have in the areas that you live, but 4-way stops or 3-way stops. Yeah, lots. Sometimes they should have traffic lights, right? Because they're so busy. But so the best thing to do here. So what's the rule of thumb when it comes to 4-way or 3-way stops? Anyone know?
Whoever is first.
Yeah, whoever is first. That's right. So whoever is first. It doesn't matter what side of the road you're on or whatever. It's whoever gets that first. And sometimes people don't get there first, but they roll through the stop sign thinking that they're there first. So.
Sometimes the car behind the one stop, you think the right.
Yep. What's your name?
Right.
Ray?
Yeah. If they're at the same time, the right one has the right of way.
Person only.
The person on the right.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
they come exactly at the same time.
Exactly the same. Did everybody hear what Ray said?
I still would wait and make sure there's eye
Yeah.
contact.
Yeah. So if A and B both came the same time, so the person on the right would have the right of way. But it's really important to try to make that eye contact, or give that wave, or like you go ahead. I always let everybody go, because you never know. Sometimes you can't predict people's behaviors, or sometimes they're unfocused, or they could be like me and have 2 screaming kids in the back seat, and they're all disheveled. So it's always good to have that eye contact and let someone go on if you're not sure. I think that's it for my slides, is it? No. And this is pretty much the same thing. Obviously, the person with the stop sign has the right of way versus the person with the yield, right? That's pretty simplistic. Even if they're both turning in the same direction, a yield is a yield. It's not necessarily a slow down and go. It's you have to give the right of way to the other person. I don't know if there's any other slides there. Okay, so the other thing that I'd like to talk about is parking. Does parallel parking stress anybody out? No?
I don't like it.
Yeah, I know. I don't like it either. It depends on what type of vehicle you have, right? I find too, the older we get, you like to have bigger, more sturdier vehicles with bigger knobs and all that kind of stuff, and they're just downsizing everything. But if parallel parking is not your thing, don't do it. Just find a spot that you can drive into that makes it a lot easier, that you can drive into and drive out of. Does most people back into their parking spots here, or do they drive in? You back in? Yep. Back in. Yeah. Backing in can be a little nerve-wracking, but if you can back in or practice backing in places that aren't busy, it's the best thing to do. Because I find we've all been at the grocery store and someone's backing out and they don't see you and you're laying on your horn, and that happens all the time. If you back into a parking spot, you can clearly drive out see people to the left or right of you, and it makes it a lot safer for you and for everybody else around. Backing out, you have to be so careful. You got to be doing your shoulder checks and looking from left to right. So if you can back into a parking spot, they teach us that in police school. That's how we would actually get in a little bit of trouble if we didn't back in our vehicles, because it's the safest way to do your vehicle. We had mentioned in the beginning about night driving and how things change, and like it was mentioned, at 5 o'clock it's dark, and the roads are getting bad this time of year. So, and again, the older we get, objects are harder to see. That can come down to pedestrians, even just objects like curbs, all that kind of stuff that you can't really see when all the snow is out, and it's a lot harder, right? Our eyes naturally deteriorate over time. We may need glasses, we may need surgery or have cataracts removed or anything like that. That's natural progression that happens. So if night driving is hard for you, then don't do it. Find someone else to be your chauffeur or do your errands during the day. Are you her chauffeur?
Yeah, she's
I'm a
not.
chauffeur.
That's awesome.
In the apron.
Yeah. So plan your trips, right? Plan your trips so that you don't have to be out and put yourself in jeopardy. The anti-glare glasses are really good, and just know your routes. If you are going to go out in the nighttime, don't venture on to some new area that you haven't been before. Kind of keep that to another time. One of the things I'd like to talk about very quickly, I know I don't have too much time left before Sean gets into his presentation. I'd like to talk a little bit about winter driving. Winter driving was something that I taught for a lot of new residents to Canada. They're not used to the weather and the roads, but it's for anybody because we all see it. The first snowfall we have, there's multiple crashes because people aren't slowing down and driving according to the conditions. It's very important to plan ahead, to know your limitations and have good judgment when you're on the road. If you're not comfortable with it, then don't do it. Take frequent stops, check the weather, that's really important too, and just slow down. If you were driving 50 and now there's all kinds of snow, well then maybe you should be driving 40 depending on where you are. That's really important. We don't want you to be doing 20 because you might get a lot of horns honked and some not nice things of all these, impatient drivers that we have these days, but it's really important to do that, to be alert. Watch out for the snow plows. I passed multiple ones on the way up here from Barrie today, and you have to be very careful. Yeah, you've got to pull over a bit to the side, but you want to be careful not to go onto that shoulder, right? Especially on our highways like 26 and stuff like that where they have those soft shoulders. So slow down when those are approaching. Carry a safety kit. Does anyone have a safety kit in their car? Like a first aid kit and all that kind of stuff, like a thermal blanket, things that they may need, an extra set of clothes in case you break down. A little blanket, something like that. That's really important things to have. The worst thing that can happen to you is you're not necessarily just for the weather. You break down and you have no supplies in your vehicle, okay? Because depending, what it's like in Ontario, we could get smashed with a storm like that and we don't know when it's going to end. So that's really important. Cell phones, everybody have cell phones? If you do, really good to keep, just to have in case something happens. Skids are pretty common this time of year just because the roads are so slippery and icy. The best thing that you can do in a skid is take your foot off the pedals, that would be the gas and the brake, and you want to steer your wheel in the direction you want to go. So basically, if you're going into a skid and you look at that tree, you're probably going to hit it. So if you're going straight, you start to skid and you look at a tree over here and you're like, oh gosh, I'm gonna hit that tree. If you keep looking at it, you're probably gonna hit it. So you want to steer and look in the direction you want to go. So instead of looking at what you might hit, you're gonna steer your wheel and look straight ahead because that's where you wanna go. And 9 times out of 10, you will come out of that skid. So that's the best thing you can remember out of today is look and steer in the direction you want to go, right?
How about 4 snow tires?
Yes. Snow tires. You'll get discounts on your insurance too, I think, if you have snow tires.
One quickie. Can you get a ticket for driving too slow
Kind of, you can,
I've had
yes.
one.
Yay.
Yes.
I've had one. I'm driving so much under the
You
speed
can.
limit nowadays. I
Yeah.
can't.
If you have a reason, but people get impatient,
Yeah.
you know. I'd rather be safe than trying to push it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
I mean, it can happen, but again, it's back to your limitations, and it's the frustrations of today's traffic environment.
Oh, yeah.
People are so rushed, they want to go, they want to push you. But if it's one of those, like, if it's a busy area and you're not comfortable, then maybe go into a less busier area to get to where you need it to be. Because, yeah, that's overwhelming in itself, the way people could try to push you and push you, like, I have nowhere to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Then you know what I would suggest, and I've done it before, pull over.
Yeah.
Pull over when it's safe to do so and let them pass, because they're
Exactly.
not going to get too much further ahead.
Yep.
The other thing, just because our weather is changing, thank you for that, just because our weather is changing so much, we talked about skids, but hydroplaning. I just want to touch like 2 seconds on that. Hydroplaning, it happens is when water builds up around your tires and your tire actually loses contact with the pavement. And it's riding on water, basically. Yeah. So again, it's much like skidding, but what you need to do is obviously be calm. You want to ease your foot off the accelerator, the gas, look and steer in the direction you want to go, and then brake very, very slowly. And you'll get out of that movement of the hydroplane. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Again, I don't think I have too much else to add. It was a very short period, and I just wanted to be able to maybe bring up some topics that you might find a little helpful. Again, try not to be too, driving can be fun, and it's a privilege, and it's always nice to be independent and get out, and don't let the other drivers,
Take over.
intimidate you or take over, because unfortunately that's just the way of the world right now. Everybody's in such a rush, but yes.
Seat belts. Some people say that I know personally, oh, I don't need seat belts, I'm only going to the store.
No.
My daughter said the car won't move unless you buckle up, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And seatbelts are so important, and it doesn't matter sometimes how fast you're going. It's how fast the other person may be going, or the distance you have to go. It's the other people you have to worry about. And the airbags will deploy or not deploy depending on the amount of the impact.
Right.
So if you don't have your seatbelt on, there's nothing that's going to hold you there, because if you're only doing 40 and you're only going 2 blocks down, but an impaired driver or someone comes and clips you, you're going to be catapulted forward, whether you're going fast or the distance you have to go or not.
Right.
So seatbelts are imperative. They really, really are. If you don't have a seatbelt on, if you're going 50 kilometers an hour and you get into a collision, it's like going off a 6-story building head on. So can you imagine if you didn't have your seatbelt? So.
Well, the seat belt no shut up, you not put them in anyway.
Yeah.
It bugs you more than for the seat belt.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
beeping and beeping and beeping.
I know, isn't that annoying? Like, just put your seatbelt on.
So,
Ray, do you have any questions?
How do you recognize, other than looking at the temperature at 0 and the gauge of your outside temperature, how do you recognize black ice?
Black ice. It's very hard. Black ice is very hard because it looks like pavement, but it's gonna have a glisten on it. It's gonna look a little like
shiny.
like shiny, like almost like a rock formation. And anything between -2 and +2, you're gonna get black ice.
So and sometimes I just touch my brakes and
Yep.
check whether something
Yep.
whether it's
I usually do that when I exit my driveway. That's the first thing I do before I hit the main roads. Within where I live, I'll do a little brake test just to see how much is out there. But it's deceiving if there's black ice and then you get a snowfall on top of it,
don't see it.
you don't see it. So
And that's the worst.
it
So
is.
it's like being I don't know, it's like oiling
Yep.
your driveway. It's
Yep.
just, you would slide
So if
on
you
it.
find yourself in that situation, right, take your feet off the pedals, look and steer in the direction you want to go until you're out of it. And if you maintain that safe distance, you'll have a gap and you'll have an escape route.
And bridges will ice first.
Yes. Yes, bridges are really bad.
I'd remind people to clean their windows off when they drive.
Oh, isn't that a
I
pain?
see many people with just where the windshield wipers work.
Yep.
And the rest is obfuscated.
I stop every person I see that does not clean off their vehicle. An example is I was driving in my police car a couple days ago down the 400. The person in front of me hadn't cleaned off their car, just enough to see out of the windshield, and 2 big sheets of ice came flying off the roof of their car and hit the front, my cruiser window. So if I'm doing 100 or 110, like that could be a bad situation, right? So take that extra 5 minutes so you can see all your vantage points. You can see
The lights and the headlights.
yes, the lights. They don't clear off the lights. And to have your full set of running lights is really good. It doesn't matter the time of the day. It doesn't matter what's going on, but to have your lights on is really, really important. Because dependent on the color of your vehicle, I have a white vehicle, so sometimes if you don't have your lights on, they're harder to see. Any other questions?
Can we quickly tip on distracted driving?
Pardon?
Can we quickly tip on distracted driving? I know a lot of people don't have GPS units and things in their
Yeah.
cars. They don't know where they're going. Now that we have cell phones, a lot of people are kind of holding on to their phone and looking at maps. and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Were you touching on that?
I can.
Oh,
I
okay.
can,
Yeah.
Everybody know how much the fine went up to recently,
Yeah.
January 1st? Yeah, not
It's
significant.
it's huge. It's huge.
We have a rule at mine house, you put your phone in your glove box.
Yeah. And you know the thing about it is, if you don't have GPS, because some cars don't have GPS, you can still put the GPS on your phone, put your phone out of view, out of sight, you can still hear it. You can still hear it, right? Or do a little, recon of your area on your GPS before you head out. I see it all the time. I see people on the road that you would swear to God they're driving drunk, but they're on their phone, and it can kill anybody in an instant. So yes, phones should only be there for a safety reason. Yes, sir.
Are there specific rules regarding footwear when driving?
No.
Just be practical about it.
Yeah.
Know your seasons and wear the appropriate footwear.
Don't be barefoot.
Right.
Don't be barefoot. And personally, flip-flops are not practical. They're not practical.
Or ski boots?
Or ski boots, yes. Anything like that. It's common sense dictates. But at the end of the day, I can't give you a ticket for... I mean, it may be a compound reason for something that may have caused an accident or something else, right? That's part of our evidentiary purposes, but no. Yeah. That's awesome. I love questions. Thank you. I hope I was able to give you some useful information. I appreciate your attentiveness, and thank you, Elizabeth. You're very welcome. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your presentation. I know Sean has a lot of really good things to let you in on, so thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Just a question, if somebody had wanted to get more information on the 55 Alive driving program, where would they go? How would they get it?
So online, I don't believe Barrie does it anymore. It used to. I used to teach it through our rec center. I know that if you go on to the Safety Council online, I think you can do courses. Thank you. I think you can do courses online. But if there's anything else that you're looking for resources or direction, if you can't get it from your local OPP officers, Monica can certainly have my email, and I'd be fine if anybody took my email or phone number and wanted to get a hold of me if there's anything I can do to help you out. Okay?
Thank you. So before I bring Sean up,
Nice to meet you.
I just wanted to mention a couple things.